Hello, good evening and welcome to Victims of the Punt, our show about New South Wales horse racing. Saturday's meeting at Rosehill is on the lands of the Burramadigal and Darug people. We acknowledge them as the traditional owners and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We've got plenty on today. Another punting story with a new face presenting it. A couple of races to preview from a hopefully slightly drier Rosehill. And, of course, Mark Shean's trial BLACKBOOKERS, probably the highlight of the show. Mark's still basking in the glory of finding Airman in the very first edition of BLACKBOOKERS, and now anyone in racing agrees that Airman is certain to win multiple Group 1 races, so be sure to pay attention today.
Mark Rhoden, what's ReadyBet offering for the punters this week?
Yes, Victims of the Punt brought to you by ReadyBet, of which I'm one of the owner and operators, Australian-owned and operated bookmaker. Look, we've had a bit on this week already with the Wimbledon final on Sunday night and the Origin Game 3 last night, both big betting affairs. We came up with a pretty good promo for Wimbledon on Sunday. It was just a bit too late to mention it in the show. We offered $3 Kyrgios to win a set for a max bet of 25, and it was very, very popular. And fortunately for me, who wanted to get to bed at a reasonable hour, I was out of my misery early and picked up the first set. So the job was done there. That cost us a bit, but it was good. Nothing to that level this week, but we have promos on racing and sport every day. So go to readybet.com.au and check it out. All right, so that's some of the bills paid. We move on to another blast from the past. And this week, we've got in the chair for the story for the first time is Rob Scurry. Now, Rob, imagine you've got a tale from the mounting yard. What have you got for us?
I actually don't. This is not from the mounting yard. This is from it put me off ownership for 25 years. So I didn't think our viewers would want to hear a story about, how smart I am. I thought they'd wanted to lighten a bit of Schadenfreude. So we'll go back to 1996. And you could almost say I was in between schools as a 17-year-old. And I was having a good time at Elwood High. And my accounting teacher was a legend. Like he didn't make accounting fun, but he loved his football, loved his racing. And I found out that he had a good relationship with Cliff Brown. So good, in fact, that he was in previous 2 years, South Australian Derby winner called Cheviot, and then a Rosehill Guineas winner called Tan Lane.
Lane, yes.
Yeah. So and he obviously found out that we're in the game and might be interested. He said, "Rob, I've got this unraced 3-year-old Salieri horse. We're confident. We think it's gonna make the grade. It hasn't raced yet. Would you like a quarter share? Go home to your dad. What do you think?" So I go home to dad, and she says, "Well, we don't really have sort of money for an unraced Salieri lying around, and you want to maybe go to this private school next year. So, I'll leave it with you. What would you do? What do you think?" And I thought, probably a dumb idea. Anyway, I go to the private school. I go out to Werribee, mounting yard mail, and I this second start Salieri, 30-1. I back it and win it, and I go, "Dad, that's the horse we could have bought." And he's like, "Oh, bugger." Anyway, this horse proceeds to win a South Australian Derby, and then run third in a Melbourne Cup. It was named Markham, and it put me off. Got beaten about a neck in a Melbourne Cup, and from the time that we could have bought it to the time it won the Melbourne Cup was about 6.5 months, 7 months. So it certainly it did a lot in 2 preparations. It was one of the best looking horses in Melbourne at the time. And you think I go on about honour and war and protests and stuff stay with me. This stayed with me through my early 20s to my late 20s. I was still kind of upset about it. But you get over it and you move on eventually. I literally got beaten about a neck in the Melbourne Cup. But that's my story for this week.
No, well, the sensible decision isn't always the right one. I mean, you probably thought you were doing the right thing at the time, not frittering your money away on unraced 3-year-olds or whatever it was. Anyway, it's always the way. Always the way.
Well, anyway, I'm back in today, and my first horse I've ever owned, and it had a trial at the Coleraine, and excited. Looked very good. So look out for him at some stage.
Excellent. Yes, there's good to see you haven't. It's only taken you
24 years
or something to get back into it, but it's good to see you can't keep a good man down. We'll just briefly touch on what's been happening in Sydney racing this week. It hasn't been raining as much, but the tracks have still been wet. And I didn't actually read the full article, but a couple of trainers were interviewed on their views on a synthetic track for New South Wales. Now, this is one thing the state of New South Wales has resisted. They've had the Acton in Canberra, which is not hardly used at all these days. But, Victoria's been gone heavily down the synthetic path for winter racing, and they've been lucky they've had one in Queensland because the poly track at Caloundra saved them a hell of a lot of meetings. But there's resistance in Sydney itself. What do you think, Mark? Do you think it's time?
Well, only 2 years ago they said it'd never rain again, so I'm not sure. Greta was on the front page saying bushfires till the eternity, wasn't it? So anyway, I'll tell you what, none about the rain. It absolutely poured here, and I don't know if Rosehill got it this morning, but it absolutely poured here, as Rob would know. He's in the more expensive part of Maroubra than I am, so
Maroubra Heights.
I'll tell you what, Randwick would be a 14 today, considering the rain we had, but I'm not sure Rosehill got as much. Look, it's probably something to think about, but I think Racing New South Wales seem more interested in putting money into prize money rather than infrastructure. So I don't think it's going to happen in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think probably should concentrate on getting Warwick Farm looked at first among others.
Rosehill. Well, Canterbury's routed as well.
Canterbury's had it after this autumn and winter. Yeah, it used to be clearly the best wet weather track in Sydney, and I think through no fault of the staff, just the amount of rain they've got and the traffic it's got, it's completely had it now. So there's Kensington's not in great shape either. So there's 3 or 4 tracks we've mentioned turf tracks within a minute that need plenty of money and time spent on them. And look, a synthetic track I think would be great to have to avoid lost meetings, but clearly a long way down the list of priorities. Rob, the highlight of the show. Do you want to take the reins for this one?
Yeah, right. RedfernExpress BLACKBOOKERS, some of the best trials in New South Wales you can put into your black book, presented by mailbagbloodstock.com.au. And we've currently got a Spieth out of Miss Barwick. No coincidence. This is our 3rd progeny of Spieth we've purchased. We had Akatango, who won last Friday, broke its maiden at Tamworth. Will Bourne, he loved this filly. He's Kieran's sort of one of the guys who does a lot of work at the sales. Great walk, athleticism. Kieran spent up to 325 for a Spieth, which is a huge amount considering the service fee. That was in January. Just completed breaking in process in the hinterland in Queensland. Did everything right, flying colours, shares available from a tick over $1,000. So email jono@themailbag.com.au. Can I just also say that we're 1 from 50% strike rate winners to runners with the Mailbag Bloodstock. Mark, you've identified 2 horses this week. We start with the Wally Yard in some pretty familiar colours, Cazalark.
Yeah, so we had trials at Randwick last Friday, which were on the poly track. So, there's a little bit of a disclaimer with these trials because poly trials can be a little bit misleading. But the horse we're highlighting here is Cazalark, who has had a number of trials. He was in and heavily backed at Canterbury about a month ago and was scratched, and they sent him back to the trials. Look, he'd had one trial where he was necked out the back by Nasrullah. Then they scratched him, had another trial at Warwick Farm, and he was almost unsteerable. He was pulling his head off. This is the most tractable I've seen him. He was jagged out the back, but he went really straight. I think it's the best of his 3 trials so far. He's right down the outside here, makes up ground. Jockey, I think Hugh Bowman Road had a lap full of horse. So, as I said, I think that's the best he's trialled, even though he was hard-held in one trial at Rosehill and then the unsteerable one at Warwick Farm. I think that's the best he's gone. So they probably backed off him a little bit to iron out some kinks, and I think they may have done that just judging by the way he hit the line there and the fact that he looked a lot more tractable to my eye. So he'll be ready to go to the races very shortly, I would say.
From the same set of trials, in the very next heat, in fact, stablemate of Cazalark, Conqueror.
Yeah, Conqueror. This is a son of Churchill, who seems to be doing some very good things with his progeny. He's had 1 start for 1 win. and he's in purple with white stars, jumps out, eases back to the box seat, and then gets a rails run in the straight. Watch him hit the line here. I'll be very surprised if not a group horse, this horse. The first start turned out to be a pretty strong race. I think there were a couple of group winners that come out of that race, actually. I think She's Extreme was in that race, looked unlucky, and Dashing Legend, or one of those legend horses who won the lead up to the slipper, was in the race as well, unless I've got dementia. But anyway, this gets right up on the fence here, hard held. I think it'll be aimed at some good races and be ready to go in the next couple of weeks. So watch out for it. I might be heading off to maybe a race like the Golden Rose or something like that. I don't know if I'm going off a bit early, but he's a lovely looking horse, and I think he's got a lot of ability. Yeah,
you're quite right. Just had to do a bit of last minute research there. She's Extreme ran fourth in that race. Conqueror won. And Dashing Legend, that might have been the other one you mentioned, it was third. So, yeah, pretty...
I think Seven Vales was in that as well. It was stakes placed as well. So it turned out a pretty strong race.
Definitely. Well, thanks very much. Just before we leave the Black Book segment, Salicel was one of yours, wasn't it, Mark?
Yeah, now, look, she trialled that. She's in at Flemington on Saturday. I was hoping for her to go to a midweek. I'm not sure how strong that... I don't know that Melbourne form that well, but she did trial well in Sydney, although... she beat yesterday, Smart Legend, got knocked down in the second race yesterday, so it was hard to get some sort of a line there. He was coming into the race and got flattened, and then he dropped out and was unplaced. So, look, I was hoping she'd maybe go more to a midweek rather than Saturday class, but nevertheless, one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think if you've been following these Black Bookers, you'd be in front, and Salicel's going to be in double-figure odds by the look of it, low double-figure odds, and Jamie Carr's got the ride, so I think you'd be silly not to have at least something on her on Saturday. All right, let's move on to Saturday. Speaking of Saturday, to the main meeting. Good a time as any to point out that Mark Shean was absolutely on fire on this show last week, going 2 out of 2. Found Conscript at the very top of the market, was backed into almost favouritism, I think, by jump time, as well as the highly promising Waihaha Falls, who absolutely bolted in for the second time this preparation. Right, we've got Rosehill, the rails back in the true, currently a heavy 9. Not much more rain forecast, but some very cold nights out in that part of Sydney, so you don't think it would be improving too much. They actually called Randwick a 9 last week, but I thought it was closer to an 11, so just be on the safe side and assume it's going to be quite wet, I think. As always, the mailbag is powered by Punting Form, the best database in racing. Now, as I mentioned, the rail is back in the true. It's going to be a heavy 9 at best, I would suggest. Any tip on the pattern, Mark?
I'm thinking they'll probably get off the fence and might be a sweeper's track, or at least off the rail. What did you think? Yeah,
there was a meeting on the 21st of May, which was very, very wet. Maybe going to be a bit wetter than this was, but that was... Yeah, no leaders won that day, and they were definitely getting wide in the straight. So I think that's probably the best way to approach the meeting until we see evidence to the contrary. Now, we're going to just have a quick look at the jockey data from Punting Form. This type of information you can find on the meeting page on the Punting Form website. Towards the bottom of this alphabetical list, you'll see Rhys Jones, who's clearly been this winter's standout apprentice. The figures for him are very good over both his last 100 rides and at Rosehill more generally as well. Anyway, we'll get into the 2 races Mark wants to have a bit of a deeper look at on Saturday, and we start with race 3. It's a benchmark 72 over 1,200 metres. And we'll start with the ready bet market. I'll just give you the main chances here. Number 1, Cacophonix, 850. 2, Dehorned Unicorn, 750. 4, Riverdale Soul, 11. 5, Pizarro, 390. 7, Diamond Hands, 11. And the bottom 3, 10 Pretty Wild, 350. 11, Morioka, 850. And 12, Smashing Eagle at 6. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I liked Pretty Wild here. Now, she won her first start in a maiden at Warwick Farm on a heavy track. And then she jumped up to Saturday Company on a much firmer surface and still acquitted herself quite well, only narrowly beaten. So I like the fact that she's coming back to rain-affected ground here. I've got her mapping quite well from barrier number 4 there. I think she'll probably end up in the 1-1. Not sure who's going to ride. Tommy Berry is indisposed with COVID, so we're awaiting a jockey there. But I think the fact that she's getting back on this soft ground, she was so impressive winning on debut. And then we look at the replay here. She was just on the back of the speed in the black colours, dived back to the rail. There was a bunch finish there. The Horn Unicorn is in the race on Saturdays on the outside there in pink and white colours. But she was up against a few hard heads there. Rebel Shadow had been racing well. So I just think she sets up nicely here. Look, I think the ones down in the bottom of the queries, Morioka, even though she knocked up the other day, still looked a bit big in the yard to me. So I thought she did a good job. But she might have been flattered being on the rail at Canterbury. The Smashing Eagle's a big query. Didn't beat much at Gosford, but won in the style of a good horse. So just a bit worried that they run such slow time there. But it could jump out of the ground, especially if sweepers are winning. But I think Pretty Wild gets a good run there, prove it in the ground. So I'm happy to go her way. Not sure what to make of that Pizarro and Riva del Sol race the other day. That was on an absolute bog. Pizarro's, even though he's won a race, was just found a little bit wanting a couple of times. So, yeah, I'd rather be on Pretty Wild there. What do you think, mate?
Well, starting with Morioka, I think there was a diametrical sort of opposite change of tactics at Canterbury. Been getting back, then straight to the front and got the job done. So that might be the key to it, just putting her in the race. I don't know, but it is the Canterbury form away is a bit sus. It is a bit sus. Smashing Eagle, yeah, was very confidently back that day and won it and justified that backing. I agree with you. I didn't have that race rating particularly highly, but it certainly got some upside. Pizarro seems to look. I suppose he found the line well first up. That's the tick for him. But I think he's just always been a bit overrated by the market. The boom, so to speak, on him is yet to be anything like justified in my opinion. I think by that sort of process of elimination, I'd have to lean to Pretty Wild as well. I think it's only a third start in the race. She's the one, perhaps with the most upside in the race. Rob, have you seen any of these, and do you have any views?
Yeah, I saw Morioka the other week. Pizarro, I was happy to back when he won at Warwick Farm. He just fell in that day. I thought he looked superb that day. But look, I'm going to defer to Mark here. I think Pretty Wild. I'm not sure who's riding it, and I saw Kath was on last start, so could be Kath again, or maybe Kath off.
Yeah, I haven't got that stat handy, but it's one I've been happy to play over the years. I know that. So, all right, I suppose on that note, we'll move on to the other race we're going to look at in a bit more detail. So this is race 8, the TOB handicap over 1,800 metres. And we'll just have a quick look at the ready bet market for this one. From the top, number 1, Phillipsburg, 750, 3 Flexible, 9, 5 First Light, 9, 8 Love the Invasion, 850. And then the only other one in the market is the pronounced favourite, number 12, the Milky Bar Kid, $2.05. Coming off a dynamic win on Wednesday in a field of 2. Mark, how did you see this one?
Well, the whole key to the race is if the Milky Bar Kid backs up. Now, I know Brett Abdallah, rode it along to set a solid speed there to get Naval Warfare off the bit, but I don't think I've ever clocked a slower sectional 600 and 400 in my life. 45 for the last 600. And I got 31.3 for the last 400. I think I would have nearly beat him on foot.
That 30 seconds plus for 400 metres, that's almost impossible for 4-legged animals, isn't it?
Look, I know as I said, I know he made it a solid staying test early by rolling along, but it looked like it was going to faint there halfway up the straight.
I haven't seen any figures yet, but I must admit to the eye, it looked dreadful. Naval Warfare is completely shot as a racehorse. He really should have been beaten that by about 20 lengths, I thought. He upped the tempo, then was dropping it. I don't know whether you want to read too much into it, but on the other hand, whether you want to be sailing into the shade better than even money. I know it's on the quick back up on the wet, which is a good old tick that people loves to see, but gee, it looks short enough to me at first glance.
Yeah, look, he might not be all that comfortable on heavy ground. Like he got through it to win, but he didn't have much to beat, obviously.
Yeah, his best run was on the bit drier surface at Kensington.
Yeah, when he led on the Kensington, it was only probably about a 4 or 5 that day. So, look, I think Phillipsburg was a terrific run against the pattern of the day last week. Here he is right out the back in the red. Now, Le Chevalier settled in the box seat, and the horses that run first and second here right up on the speed all the way, which was certainly the pattern last week, had to be up near the lead and on the inside. Now, Phillipsburg right out at the back comes steaming down the outside. And he goes back to a heavy track at Rosehill where he won a couple of starts ago, made up a stack of ground here, gets better conditions, better track conditions to suit. Hopefully they're swooping from, back in the field, or at least from midfield at the very worst on Saturday. And I'm hoping Milky Bar Kid goes around and this market holds up around that 750 mark. So I think he's a great bet here, Phillipsburg. If the Milky Bar Kid doesn't go around, well, we're going to be taking shorter odds, but I think he's a great wet tracker, and I thought that was a fantastic run last week. So he's my other play for the day on Saturday, race 8, number 1.
Thanks very much for that. Rob, what have you got to tell us about what you've seen of these from the mounting yard?
Oh, look, mostly look like Wednesday horses. You've got Kirkby, the Zuka. Will that ever win another race? Kirkby, I can't see it winning on a Saturday. I think there's a massive hole in the market here with the Milky Bar Kid. I can't believe it's even money. It should be $4. Phillipsburg, it's a horse that's holding great condition. It's a real trier. I think you've got to have something on it. Mr. G, from out of a horse called Music Review.
Very good. Yes.
One of our mounting yards, Rob's story. Backed it at $40 its first start at Canterbury one day. Tipped it to my old man too. Replied, that won. Anyway, yeah, I think that's a pretty good horse. It's a bit of a yard watch though, so because he's a gross type. But yeah, look, I think it's a good race to bet. If the Milky Bar Kid runs, I'll be looking to bet against it, and maybe hold multiple bets in the race.
And I think a very interesting runner on the day, boys, is Frumos in race 9, number 13, who hasn't beaten much at Newcastle, but has won and treated horses with contempt the way she's won there. Admittedly, she's skinny odds and got no weight in race number 9, but crikey, she's been impressive at the provincials.
The horse she beat at her first start won at Gosford today. Hide Your Heart. Didn't beat much, but got the job done, and Frumos was certainly a class or two above that particular galloper. Well, thanks very much to both of you for that. Rob, if the Milky Bar Kid either drifts or gets beaten, there might be a job for you at ReadyBet as a price assessor. So you've nailed your colours to the mast there. $4 chance about the even money shot. That's very aggressive. We love it. Just recapping those two plays for the day from Mark. That was race 3, horse number, 10, Pretty Wild, and race 8, number 1, Phillipsburg. Well, that brings us to the end, yet again, of another episode of Victims of the Punt, and we thank you very much for joining us today, and thanks as always to Rob and Mark, and we'll see you next week.